Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It is actually quite a nice morning here in the south of England. It's going to rain all afternoon and all evening, but going to enjoy the blue sky and lovely white clouds while I can, because we've just had another week of just like constant rain. But I will take constant rain and temperatures of like tops of 20 degrees C than what's going on in Europe at the moment. So yeah, it's just absolutely crazy, the weather at the moment for July, that I can't believe we are going into August in this next week. And I'm so excited for this coming Thursday, the 3rd of August, because Sanditon Series 3 is finally available here in the UK. It was released in America about 6 months ago. And I have kept as far away from spoilers as possible, and so to finally get to watch the final series, it's just like so exciting. So I've just doing my usual routine and such since you last saw me. It was only a week ago. I'm getting better at this, but I said it was quite a short book I was reading, which is what I'm here to talk about, and that is The Reader on the 627 by Jean-Paul Didierlaurent. I found out how to say his name, Didierlaurent. So I feel, I'm quite chuffed with myself that I was able to pronounce it straight away perfectly right, because multiple times in videos I have said stuff where I've tried to pronounce something and it's like I overthink it, and then my mouth just goes no, my brain goes stop, and I just sound like an absolute fucking idiot. So I got his name right. Yay, I'm very happy about that. So I got this a while ago and it's just been sat on my bookcase for quite some time. This was actually published in 2014 and it was Jean-Paul's debut novel. He was a French writer and it was published in 2014, as I said. Sadly, he passed away 2 years ago from cancer, and I believe he published a few more books after this. So there are more books of his around, which I haven't come across since buying this book. But of course, obviously, I wanted to read this book before possibly reading any more. Now, what is The Reader on the 627 about? So it is set in France, and it's about a guy called Guilain. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Like I just said, I tend to, say some things in different languages or something where I completely cock up the pronunciations and such. So I'm going to refer to him as Guilain because that was how I read his name. Apologize if I've got that wrong, but that's what you're going to hear me say. So Guilain works at a pulping factory. Basically, he destroys books for a living in this massive machine, which kind of is like an industrialized shredder, basically. And so he just feeds it all day, every day, book after book after book. And at the end of the day, when they shut down the machine, obviously there's some pages that might still be tangible and everything that hasn't quite gone through, and they have to clean out the machine in order to make it clear for the next day. And he keeps the pages of books that haven't been completely destroyed. And when he goes on his morning train, and also on the way home, but it tends to be the morning train, which he catches at 6:27 every morning, he reads aloud the pages. And because these are pages from all different books, one page can be from one book, one could be from another. It could go from fiction adventure story, and the next page it's from a cookbook, and he just reads aloud, and everyone in the train, because they're regular commuters and that, they come to know him. And then when he appears, they're like, oh, everyone be quiet, let's listen to what he's going to tell us for the day. And one day when he is on the train, because the train's got collapsible seats, that you push down so you can sit down on, he goes to push a seat down so he can sit down, and a USB stick falls on the floor. He picks it up, he takes it home, and on the USB stick are 72 documents numbered 1 to 72. And when he opens them, he realizes that these are actually diary entries by a woman called Julie. And he starts reading them and finds himself kind of falling in love with her. And it sets him off on this sort of mission to try and find out who she is and, you know, learn about love and such. So that's the whole synopsis of the book. As I said, it's not a big book at all. It's only, I think, 196 pages. Let me just check. Oh no, close. 194. I wasn't that far off. So it's not a big book at all. So even though it's got a lot going on. So when I started reading this, you know, I do bear in mind debut novels, so there could be some possible problems with it. I'm never, you know, going into a debut novel like deliberately trying to find holes and emphasize problems. I just bear that in mind, that there could possibly be some holes here because of it being a debut novel, and naturally as the writer progresses with their body of work, that those holes could potentially be filled, and to look out for that in the future. So I'm in no way, you know, deliberately going, oh, they should know better than this, that, and the other, if they don't have the experience of it. So there we go. So it just makes me think, okay, you could possibly come across XYZ in this book. And I did have problems with this book. First of all, I had problems with the length of the book, given the way in which he chose to write this story. Now, what I mean by that is, well, first off, just to give a kind of, if you've never come across this book before, it's kind of a cross between the film Amélie and the book Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. So it has, so like from the Amélie side, it feels like, you know, you've got this voiceover who's telling you all about these people's lives who Gillian interacts with. We learn so much about their lives, just all of these little idioms and everything about them, which is lovely. But with Amélie, you get told that because it is a big thing for later on in the story, whereas for the reader on the 627, it felt like, why are you doing that? If you wanted to keep this concise, you could have chopped out a load of that story explanation about these particular individuals that we had no need to know about, and still kept it in this short, just under 200 page limit. Or if you want to keep that stuff in, I'd suggest that you'd extend your page numbers, you know, and just a bit more, just to give it a bit more of a balance. Because don't get me wrong, I don't mind books that don't have much dialogue, but when you go from the first bit of dialogue you get when he on his first train journey that we witness on the 627 in the opening chapter, which is the opening chapter is only 4 or 5 pages long, and then we don't get anyone speaking again until about page 40, which in a 200 page book is quite a significant amount of time. You kind of have to go, was that the right decision? So that's my first irk, that it's just, yeah, the structure. The Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine part, really, because of this is general life, but there is a dark undertone to it, and we've slowly progressed to find out what the kind of darkness is really properly about. So I did that combination of a charming, you know, the finding out about all of the lives of these people, like especially like the older man with the dog who goes out every single day at a specific time to let his dog go to the bathroom. It's just, I really liked him, and I was like, oh, I want to find out a little bit more about him. But he's one of those characters where Jean-Paul doesn't tell us much about, but he will tell us loads of information about Giuseppe, and Giuseppe is important to the story, but there was so much I learned about Giuseppe where I was like, well, what's the relevance of that? Why do I need to know this? I would have preferred that you cut off some of that stuff about Giuseppe and his backstory and give it to the old man, because I've really found that old man really, really interesting, and about his coping mechanisms and such, and how that relates to our main character. I was just a little bit frustrated with that. So yeah, the combination of like Amelie with the charming nature of it, versus with Eleanor Oliphant's completely fine kind of underlying tension and darkness, I thought that was a great combination. It's just structurally and the page count, it didn't quite work for me. Okay, so yeah, second issue. I felt a bit frustrated that when it came to writing female characters, or the female character, should I say, Julie, I felt like Jean-Paul didn't quite understand her. I know that sounds very, very weird, but the thing is that we are presented Julie through a series of diary entries. Diaries are very personal things, obviously. We learn so much about the individual through what they write and how they express themselves and such. And I found Julie's diaries really interesting. However, I have to spoil a little bit here. So if you wanted to read this, this is going to be a minor spoil, but you know, we get to see her near the end of the book actually as a person, you know, rather than just in a diary entry. And I felt like what is written in the final chapter, what Julie writes as her diary entry in the final chapter, if I was a person who that happened to, I'm sorry, I would be thinking more, I think I may need to talk to the police about this than what Julie decided to do. Because I'm like, I'm sorry. If that happened, I'd be kind of freaked the fuck out. It's okay, it's fucking sweet, but at the same time, I just felt like Jean-Paul didn't quite. Oh God, this is so frustrating to say this. Didn't understand from a woman's perspective of that happening could be seen as pretty fucking terrifying. He wrote Julie as seeing that as, oh, that is really, really sweet and everything, and it's just like, that's not realistic. That is not realistic. Now obviously Jean-Paul was a man. I'm not going to you know, put him down or anything for not seeing the female perspective on things, because obviously he was a man. But at the same time, it's like there is reality and then there's ridiculous sunshine and rainbows endings, and this had a ridiculous sunshine and rainbow ending for me by the way that Julie responded to what happened. So the ending let me down, basically. In a nutshell, I wasn't impressed by the ending whatsoever. The journey that gets taken with our main character through the book, it's very again, this is a structural kind of issue, in that because of the backstory, you know, all of that kind of going through and everything, it felt like it was quite slow at first, and then suddenly lots of stuff was happening, and you were thrown so much information. And Giuseppe's like, so with him going, right, I think I need to find this woman, all of a sudden Giuseppe's done all of the research into all the possible places that Julie could be, got all the addresses, and basically hands it over to him and goes, go find her. And it was just a little like, I'm a bit concerned that Giuseppe did all that research like at the drop of a hat. It was just, it felt very weird. It felt very reading. I know maybe I was in the wrong state of mind when I read this. I don't know, but it kind of felt like, why do these men feel it is completely okay to do this? And even with the decision of how our lead character lets Julie know how about the diaries and such, I was like, oh, for God's sake, okay, I can understand it's sweet what he did, but at the same time, it would have been a lot better if he did that in person. Just do that in person. It was just like, oh, good God, you have invaded her work, her, her space, and done what you wrote, and expect her to just fall over and go, oh yes. And really frustrating that Julie did that, because if it was me, like I said, I would be phoning the police. I'd be like, who the fuck is this man? It had such an interesting concept, and it had so much possibility, but at the same time, everything in my head just when we got to that point of Giuseppe basically helping him out, I was just like, oh God, and it just went at like a million miles an hour at that point. So the pacing was off, the structure was off, and I didn't like the ending. It just, I just wish that if it had been structured better, if it had more pages, and the ending was more realistic, I would have felt so much better with this book. But the way that it was put together, it didn't quite work for me, unfortunately. But then that's the thing, people respond to books in a positive way that other people respond negatively, and vice versa. There are loads of books, I'm sure, that I have like praised to the hilt on this channel, who other people don't like, and I've had people tell me that they didn't like it, which is really great to hear, because obviously different opinions, and vice versa. I'm sure there's going to be people who read this and loved it, and quite possibly will tell me in comments. But I just there was something that just, it left a bad taste in my mouth. It left a bad taste in my mouth. And it's not a bad book. That is the frustrating thing. It's like, if it had just had various improvements on it, like I said, even the ending, I'm going to make a reference here. It's not me spoiler, but for people who have read the book, if it wasn't the tile and it said that in person to her face, I think it would have been stronger ending, because this is the thing about this man being, he's basically alone. He doesn't talk to people outside of his work unless he is reading something that's printed. He reads it out loud. So the courage to speak to Julie to her face would have been such a massive character development. But he didn't. And it's just, oh God, it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. And ultimately, as I said, because like from the female perspective, if what happened to Julie with the tie all over happened to me, I'd be possibly calling the police, because I would be really fucking terrified of what the heck is going on. And that put a really negative mindset for me on Julie. I didn't want to dislike Julie. And to be honest, as I said, we know her from diaries, and then we see her the one time with outside of a diary entry. So I had nothing negative to think about her. And then all of a sudden, because of that, I'm thinking really badly about her. Like, are you insane? What are you doing? And I don't like to put people down like that, because it's like, well, technically I don't know Julie. I know her diaries, but I don't know her. And then I'm feeling really, really negative about her. And it's just, I didn't like that. I didn't like feeling horrible towards Julie. It just got me so frustrated, this ending. And as I said, it's not a bad book. That's the problem. It's just so frustrating. So, yeah, I finished this yesterday evening. I had a bit of a rant to my sister and our bestie, Sarah. Hey, Sarah. I always say hi to Sarah. Hi, Sarah. It just... And they agreed. I told them what happened. And they're like, that sounds like shit. And I spent all the evening thinking about it, and I've woken up this morning and I've been thinking about it, and I've been wondering, how am I going to do this video? And I just told myself, look, just be honest, because it's the way that you are on your channel. So it's a really frustrating read for me, this one. But on a positive, I do see a prospect for improvement for his next book, because, as I said, he published a few more books, I believe, before he passed away. And having that reminder in my head that this is a debut novel, it's going to have issues. It is going to have issues, because no one can write a perfect first novel. No one whatsoever. Yeah, even authors, classic authors, people who I have praised to the hilt on this channel, have had disappointing debut novels. It's the way it is. In comparison to their later works, just to clarify. Because, like, say, for example, like the Harry Potter books, the first Harry Potter book is great, but in comparison to her later ones, my God, the JK's writing, if she were to go back and rewrite The Philosopher's Stone, it would be quite a different book, I think. But that's just my opinion. There is good characterization. There is, I found, the way that he made the pulping machine almost a character in itself. It's an inanimate object, but it is this powerful character. The dark undertones, the Amelie kind of, as I said, structuring of learning all these backstories of characters and such vivid characters. Like I said, I remember the old man with the dog who goes out every single morning. He's one of my favorite characters in this whole book. Things like that. He has the goods. It's just the structuring, the pacing, and the writing of female character that just, and the ending, that just outweighed the good for me. But I see that as, it's got the goods. He can improve on this. So I would say, you know, possibly a very promising future books. But yeah, but for this one, it was just, you know, okay. So those are my thoughts on The Reader on the 627 by Jean-Paul. I nearly. I saw the letter D and I nearly said G because of Jean-Paul Gaultier. I know that's really bad of me. I stopped myself in time. Yeah, I didn't actually say his name wrong. Jean-Paul Didierlaurent. So, my usual questions. Would I read this again? No. It was an interesting read. As I said, it had some goods, but it had some issues for me. I've got no interest in reading it again, but I won't see it as a terrible read. Would I recommend this to anyone? I'd say if somebody liked like Amelie or Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine, then I'd say, you know, you might want to give this a go, but be aware that it has some issues with its structuring and, you know, that kind of thing. Would I read any more of Jean-Paul's books? Now, I never say no for a novelist who I have never read before, but I would bear in mind that obviously that I've had some issues with his writing. So I would say yes, but I would give it a bit more time before I actually pick up his next book. So yeah. It's very interesting, but I think I need to put down Jean-Paul's writing before going back to it. Yep, so those are my thoughts on The Reader on the 627. If you read this book, I'd love to know what you think. Leave comments below, give me thumbs up, thumbs down, touch you at side. I'm back with my thoughts on my next read, which is we're back with Kate Morton, The Clockmaker's Daughter. Now, this is the most recent paperback of her books that I've got, because she did publish another book. I can't remember if it was late last year or right at the beginning of this year. So she has got another book out, but I don't have it. So this is the most recent one I have. And this is the only Kate Morton book that my mum hasn't read yet, because my mum's read all of the Kate Morton books apart from this one and her more recent one, as I said, had just recently been published. So after I've read this, I'm actually going to lend it to my mum. So I'll be back with my thoughts on The Clockmaker's Daughter by Kate Morton as soon as I'm done. All right, guys. Bye.